gonna be my campaign song. My 2020 President Kennedy skid line. I'm not running for political office. I want the freaking Fed. I've been there before. I've actually sat in the desk, sat in the chair of the Federal Reserve chairman's chair. It was Ben Bernanke's at the time, but I literally got to sit in the freaking chair. And when you sit in the chair, there's definitely something different about it. When you sit there, you just realize how much. There's a plaque above the mantle. It's a big fireplace, and it says, on this place in 1942, 43, whatever it was, the decision was made to drop the atom bomb basically on, Japan. And you're like, shit, things go down in this room big time. I'm trying to get back to that chair. In February 2011, we had this student government trip, and it was like a free trip. It was like, hey, we're spending student government money at college, so it's like we're spending other students' tuition money to go on a free trip. So I went on this free trip because there's a super hot Russian chick going on this trip. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go on this trip. And this super hot Russian chick was pretty much a Russian spy. Like, I'm 100% convinced of it. My dad's convinced of it. Everyone that's met her is pretty much convinced that this chick was a Russian spy. We walk up to the back door of the Federal Reserve, and there's a dude there with like a machine gun. Like, it's cold, so he's all like bundled up. He's got his face mask on before face masks were popular. And she just asks to go inside, and the dude lets us go inside. It was weird, super weird. Walk into Ben Bernanke's thing, get to sit down. And I was like, wow, this is where they control the world from. This is interesting. It's like, this is weird. I'm wondering how the Russian spy girl worked out. It worked out well. Short period of time, but it worked out well. But President Kennedy wanted to go to state banking. They offed him. It basically means non-centrally controlled banking. It's definitely the way of the future. For World War I, when we put retributions on the Germans, and that's how Hitler came about. So in a way, we helped sponsor Hitler. And they inflated their currency and just paid off their debt to the United Nations or whoever, the Allies, with fake money. Pretty much, they just printed it up. Well, the country was completely devastated. They were buying grocery goods with wheelbarrows. Like, I've shown this before. And they implemented state banking, pretty much. And within 10 years, that country was prosperous enough. Within 15 years, they were prosperous enough to take us on in World War II. So it didn't take that long. And they were also the first people to build twin-engine jets. They were doing all that stuff when 10 or 15 years before that, people couldn't even buy bread in that country. And the difference was the banking system. So as a rule of thumb, whenever you introduce decentralized control versus centralized control always whoops butt. Because the information is found at the ground level on the front lines. It's not coming from the top. And companies that do that, organizations that do that, banking systems that do that, governments, economies, whenever you decentralize anything and you get rid of centralized control, you have prosperity. And when you have crazy, overreaching centralized control, like current policy, you can guarantee where you end up at, because the history is very clear. Centralized control ultimately ends in death. That's pretty much where it ends. It's like some of you that believe there's a U-shaped recovery or a V-shaped recovery because somebody on CNN said so. It's an I. It's an upside down I. You have central control in this country like we've never had before. You can guarantee it's going to be an I. And you're also working with super outdated technology. I think we all understand that now with the Zoom and all that other stuff that's going on. The internet was basically built on infrastructure built in the 70s and 80s. And so you're going to see big infrastructure bills. But the other thing that you're going to see is that the monetary system's outdated, right? Like fiscal stimulus, it's not stimulus because we're keeping the lights on. There's nothing stimulative about it. It's to stay where we currently are, if we can even maintain it. But when you do that, you have no control of it. So you send people $1,200 checks in the mail. You think that there'll be some sort of increase in demand or maybe an increase in supply. Maybe they'll invest it in their business. And so maybe one of those two things will happen, but you don't really know. It's just it's a guess. If they put you on a digital dollar and then they made certain things expire, like that $1,200 is going to expire and you can spend it on whatever, then they could basically guarantee that they're going to increase demand or increase supply in a way. Basically, they got to put you on some sort of Fed crypto or Fed coin or whatever they want to call it. That way they can kind of monitor where all transactions are occurring, and you don't have like all these 3, 4, 5 vendors to sell like a truck. Like, you don't need that many vendors. You have like the Fed is the owner, and they're the issuer of currency, and there's like two people in the transaction. It's like you and your buyer or seller, and then like, of course, Uncle Sam, he's always going to be there watching you, New monetary theory, or MMT, or Marxist money theory, would basically like they would agree with that. They're like, yeah, we would like to know where capital is flowing to and control that. So that's where you're going. Because of that, you're going to have a complete revamp of the financial structure. A lot of you guys don't really quite understand that. Every 90 years, like clockwork, we redo terms of money. What is money? What is currency? Are we using shells? Or what are we doing for money? And we're right at that spot. We're like that's the next thing. Like your next administration, whether that's the Trump administration or the Biden administration or whatever, that is the task. Like 100%. There's two tasks there. It's like, what do we do about China? How much shit do we want to steal from China? Number one. How good is China's military? Number two. And then number three, we're fixing this monetary system in a way that, we're going to bring it into the future. Ultimately, state and money should be disconnected. They should not be connected whatsoever. To get there will eventually happen, but we may have to go through a few versions of failure and a few like food shortages and a few, civil unrest situations to get there. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but, I enjoy post-dating my stuff so I can like replay it when like, the first actual events happen and be like, yo, see what's happening. They're redoing your monetary system. And they did mention a digital dollar in the stimulus, by the way. You can Google that and look it up. They did mention it. They actually allocated some funds for the creation of some sort of digital federal dollar currency, etc. Personally, I like currencies that are outside the Fed. I don't want the government involved in my money. I don't want the government involved in my bedroom. I don't want the government involved in my church. I don't want the government involved in my education. I want the government to do one thing, and that's to protect against foreign invaders, foreign and domestic. That's it. Switzerland probably has a more superior situation to that, which is arm every citizen, train every citizen, and have a completely decentralized military. And that's what we don't do in the U.S. We line up all of our warcraft. They're all sitting out there on air. Like, that's why Pearl Harbor was such a tragedy. They had all the freaking airplanes in the middle of the runway, all lined up without the keys in them. And they just came in and decimated, like, hundreds of millions of hours of, like, labor. Like, they just came in and just blew them all up. And that's centralized. Switzerland is decentralized. They got helicopters all over their country. They got machine guns all over their country. They got crap in barns. Like, they got, it's like that. No one messes with them. We just decided to do our banking with them because it's a very safe, stable place to do real banking with them. Like, when you need to move real money, that's where you're moving it through. You're not moving it through the U.S. because there's too many vendors, too many people in the government that are up in your business, too many people up in the government. They're doing nothing for you. They're just stealing. They have no qualifications. Nancy Pelosi does jack shit for nobody. But somehow, like, we just allow that theft to, like, just happen. It's worse than Enron. It's worse than Enron every single day up there on the Hill. And nobody's fired a shot yet. But I think that's going to change this decade. I really am optimistic about that. I mean, there was a time where they taxed tea in this country. They tried it. A lot of people died that day. Like, a lot of people died. They're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't tax tea. It's like, no, man, you tax some coffee, we're going to really have it down. We got the goods here. Goods have come in. Goods have arrived. So what we got going on here are stacks of silver 1-ounce coins. These ones are the South African Krugers. And there's a reason I went with the South Africans on this particular order. So these are 1-ounce silver coins. So these ones are from the South African Mint, and these ones are from the U.S. Mint. This would be called a Silver Eagle. And there's a couple things that's very, very unique about the U.S. and Canadian mints. And you can notice this one says 1 ounce of fine silver, $1. And that's very interesting to me. Same weight. One's from the South African Mint, and the other one is from the U.S. Mint. Exact same weight, pretty much exact same value. The U.S. Eagles and the Canadian Maples are like, they get a little bit of like fan base to them. So like they get a little bit of a premium on them, a couple bucks. And one of these is, an ounce of silver is $15 today in America. Like, it's $15 in the futures market. In the physical market, delivered to your house, probably $25 a coin. These coins are $20, the South African. These are just like on the last order. I do one order a month. On this order, South Africans were trading at like a pretty low price. So I was like, yeah, I'll take 100 of those. And then I always get a few US or Canadians just because they carry a little bit of extra value, maybe, but I like to just get like a few. But I normally go with whatever deal is deal. Like I'm just trying to get as much 1 ounce silver as I can possibly get at the best price. Go to buy metals, they'll be at something called the spot price. Spot price is the market price, the whatever it's trading at. And then there'll be a price above spot. That's kind of like the dealer fee. Like to make this get to you, people got to get paid. So typically it's a dealer, the processors, the shippers, all that would be above spot, be like premium. They have different words for it. It's not uncommon to pay like $1 to $5 above spot per ounce for physical delivery. I like physical delivery. You can own silver in the paper markets, but it doesn't do you a whole lot of good if the paper evaporates. Like, yeah, you can tell people like, yo, I own 5,000 ounces of silver. Good for you, bro. But there's a difference when you have it in your hand. What fascinates me about it is that the silver to gold ratio has never been like more off. Actually, it's only been off this one time in human history, in recorded human history for 5,000 years has it been where it is now, which is trading over 100 to 1. So 100 of these, it's really like 114, I think, on the day that we're filming this. Like 114 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold. Which is ridiculous because for most of human history, Jesus, Moses, all the way back, 12 to 20 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold. However, we have a futures market. And because we have a paper futures market, there's a very small window of opportunity, and I'm trying to basically buy as much as I can reasonably buy. Why the ratios are completely artificial and completely out of whack. Investing books like pre-1950 and there before always mandate a 1 to 10% holding of any wealth portfolio to be in physical metals. Every single book. If you go to 1971 or beyond, particularly like the university textbooks, it's not really in there. And if it is, it's like in the futures markets. Nobody really has addressed it. It's kind of left public school teaching. Mostly. Not taught much. And so I like silver because it's more in my current like wealth class. Like everybody's got $20. Everybody can take $20 and put it off the table. And if you come back to it 50 years from now, I guarantee you, you're going to see your inflation at least is going to be there. Still going to have your $20 value plus your inflation, whatever that may be. Because the ratio of silver to gold is so off, at some point, it will come back into line, which would be like 20 to 1, 12 to 1. So at some point, I'll be able to just take like 100 pieces of silver like this. Like I got 110 because I bought 1 ounce, right? 110 pieces. I could trade it for 1 gold. But ideally, I should be able to trade it for like 4 or 5. And the advantage to that is that gold is a lot more consistent. It's a lot more consistent long term. The next clip will be Ray Dalio's portfolio, the all-weather portfolio. This is what his clients are in, but you'll notice it's 7.5 in physical gold or silver. That's just how he organizes the portfolio. But if you go to any modern investing, like if you got a nephew or you got someone who's going like finance school right now, ask to see his textbook, and you won't find a lot in there. You'll find new modern monetary theory, and you don't have to have a whole lot of wisdom to understand where that's going to end up. And if it does end up like that, new modern monetary theorists, screw the pooch, as they say. These bad puppies might be worth a lot more than that. But even if not, these are good for anything. If you want to buy real estate and you bring these into your banker and you're like, here's 1,000 ounces of silver. They'll be like, come with us, sir, to the top floor. And you will be able to put it down on property. I can assure you, you will be able to put it down on property. In fact, you will always be able to put it down on property, particularly when things are bad and banks don't want to open and all that stuff. If you're like, hey, I'm bringing in 1,000 ounces of silver and 20 ounces of gold, they're like, oh, well, we'll create a special meeting for you. What I like about real money is it's a transaction without a third party. I give you this, you give me goods, services or whatever, and we're done. Like there's no taxes to record on it. There's no transaction ever happened. I like buying things from government mints for the moment because I can prove where the silver came from, like that, is probably more ethically got out of the ground than like some of these like diamond operations. Like I don't want a blood diamond right now. I'm not trying to promote that, but like ultimately, when you have these in quantity, they get melted down anyway and shipped for industrial purposes or banking purposes. So if you've got like thousands of ounces or whatever, it's not uncommon for them to just melt it down and change, turn them into bars. Tesla's buying 5,000. There's no legal tax on this. And if there is tax, or I have to claim this going through customs, well, this is good for $1. And so you can take this to an exchange on your person. You can go right through the airport and you can claim how much are you carrying 10,000 or more on you? And you can go, nope, I'm carrying $100 on me. Depending on the country that you're moving it to. What up, bro? You want to see real money? That's real money, baby. You ever seen real money? You got any real money?
I got money.
You got money?
I got money.
They printing more money than you can make? They might be printing more money than you can make.
Probably. My money.
Yeah, that's why you need real money. They can't really print this that fast. If you're moving money in and out of countries, you might be moving just $1 million US. You're not moving $15.5 million US. You're moving, according to today's price. Obviously, when the ratios come in line to, when 1 ounce of gold is, back to 12 to 20 ounces of silver, you very well may be moving $100 million. But you're paying taxes or paying fees or claiming $1 million. And that lets you go from one country or one currency to another currency. I do believe that there will be there already are crypto exchanges behind it, because obviously people are like, well, how do I move this through the internet and stuff? It's very freaking easy. But you can move this without taxes. You can move this without recording it. You can move this even if you do got to be straight up honest at JFK Airport and you'd be like, yeah, man, I'm moving some South African Krugers. What's the exchange rate on that? Look that up, bro. You might be moving $10 million in your buffle bag, but you're only paying taxes on the exchange ratio, which is a joke. If you get the Canadian maple, it's a $50 Canadian. It's 50 Canadian dollar. Well, the exchange ratio to American dollars is not nearly that. Well, it's an ounce of gold that's worth $1,700 an ounce today. Who knows what it's worth tomorrow. Ultimately, when they need to restabilize a financial system, they're going to have to back it by a metal. And that metal is going to be ratioed out. So I don't care if they back it by gold, back it by silver, back it by whatever, the ratios will fall. So
it's on one shelf.
It's future-proof. It's always been future-proof because Jesus used this, bro. Because Jesus used this. What did Jesus use? Jesus used silver and gold. What Jesus use?
This crap.
How did Jesus buy bread? Silver and gold.
He made it fall from heaven.
Using silver and gold. Ounce bars, for example, and they do whatever they do with them electronic-wise. So I like that there's no third-party vendor. I don't need a bank to be open. I don't need anyone to clear it. I don't need to pay fees. And Pops just reminded me that Jesus was portrayed for 30 pieces of silver, which is not that much. So that's it. It goes back, baby. It's deep. It goes back deep. And the largest owner of silver in North America is Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, the two of them combined. So if you think I'm a gold bug or whatever, so are the rest of the billionaires. So this is a storage facility for all these commercial jetliners that are just chilling while the Federal Reserve prints money to somehow keep them afloat. But there's just hundreds and hundreds of airfields like this holding hundreds and hundreds of jets all over the world, which is incredible. And also probably really dangerous to park all that. And also not good for the monetary system because they're just printing money they're literally flying planes right now with 2 people on them, which is the only reason they're doing that is because they think somebody's going to send them a bailout check. But unreal. And this is why you don't get a U-shaped recovery. You don't get a W shape. You get an I. It goes like this. Doop. And that's where you fall back. And you're going to fall back quite a ways before we regain. If you're in the camp where you're like, yeah, we're just going to return back to work and everything's just going to go right back to normal, it'll take several years to get all of these planes off of where they're parked at. Several years to get that. You're just looking at just hundreds of millions of dollars of just straight debt. Very last plane off of where it's currently parked at. it's just unreal, unfathomable. All that, just debt, like just an excessive amount of debt. I mean, all the virus makes the top news, and though it's sad, and it does have a kill rate, but it's less than most other things on the planet. This right here is very much, you're witnessing a collapse of, well, Bray Dalio would tell you you're witnessing the collapse of the old world order, and you're going to witness the beginning of a new world order. But it's just the massive amount of centralized control to make this happen, and how easy it is to make this happen is just blows my mind with how fragile society is, and people just assume they're going to walk into a grocery store and see a gallon of milk there tomorrow. It's humorous to me, because nowhere in human history has that lasted for very long. When things are good and frothy for a good 50 to 100 years, you got to start thinking like it's about to go down. I mean, it's just unreal. It's just absolutely unreal. Listen to this pilot talk to the controller.
You know the total number you have right now? Not offhand, but on the airfield, I believe.
100 on the airfield, and we got 15 inbound from Southwest Air. And we're going to bail these companies out. We're not going to allow entrepreneurs to start new companies. And it's unreal. And you're 100% living in a socialistic government. There's no doubt about it. You live in socialism. And just one event like this occurs again, and you're 100% communist nation. People don't understand how fast you get there. So these are owned, operated, and traveled on by the wealthiest human beings on the planet. And they're getting bailouts. And most of the planet will never recover from this. Your avocado farmers, your tea farmers, your coffee farmers, your t-shirt makers, they're never recovering from this. And people think that there's a possibility of a V-shaped recovery. It's absolutely ridiculous. In capitalism, there'd be entrepreneurs lined up at the runway here, literally in golf carts everywhere, organizing leasing deals with whatever manufacturer, and these things would be back up in the air, moving something somewhere that's stuck somewhere and not getting where it needs to go. But in a socialism system, you don't have any chance. Like, you have to have the blessing of like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, or you have to have a military big enough to handle getting rid of the Wizard of Oz. No other generation in the history of America would allow their government to do this. But hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. And you're living in a time where there are very, very weak men. Good news is, weak men create hard times create strong men. Hard times may last a little bit longer than you think.